When you think of Samson, a certain image probably pops into your head, right? This larger-than-life hero with superhuman strength, the long hair, the guy who fought lions with his bare hands and took down entire armies. But let's be honest, he's also famous for his spectacular personal failures, his terrible taste in women, and an arrogance that was, well, literally blinding. And that right there brings us to the central puzzle of Samson's whole life. How can a man who is so defined by his flaws, by his mistakes, also be held up as a hero of faith? It just feels like a complete contradiction. And in this explainer, we're going to dig in and see why it's not. And you don't have to take my word for it. The proof is right here in the New Testament. In a chapter that's basically the Hall of Faith, who gets a shout out? Samson. He's listed right there with giants of faith like Gideon, as someone who, through faith, conquered kingdoms. So the Bible itself hands us this paradox. Let's try to unpack it.
Okay, so to get a handle on this, we first need to look at what Samson actually did, or didn't do. His legacy is really a tale of two very, very different stories. On the one hand, you could absolutely call him a successful troubler. I mean, he was a massive, constant thorn in the side of Israel's enemies, the Philistines. He caused them no end of chaos. But on the other hand, he was a failed savior. See, his main job, his calling, was to deliver Israel from the Philistines. And the story is very clear. He only began to deliver them. He never finished the job. He never actually led his people to freedom. So what can we learn from this mixed bag of a legacy? Well, the first huge lesson is all about the gap between what you can do and who you are. Let's be clear, there is absolutely no question about this part. Samson was given an unbelievable, divine gift. We're talking superhuman strength, a power that was totally unheard of, and it was meant for a very specific purpose. And here it is. This is the heart of the issue. He had this incredible gift, but he just didn't have the character to handle it. His life was driven by impulse, by revenge, by lust. He treated this sacred, God-given power like it was his own personal plaything, not a heavy responsibility. And that's the core lesson for us. Gifts, talents, abilities, they are never, ever a substitute for character. All right, let's move on to the second lesson. And this one, well, it pretty much flips our whole modern idea of strength completely upside down. Just think about it for a second. When Samson was at his peak, taking out 1,000 Philistines with a jawbone of a donkey, he was also at his most arrogant. He was completely reckless. His self-reliance, his belief that this strength was his, that was his real weakness. It made him careless, it made him vulnerable, and ultimately it's what led to his downfall. And this is the pivot point of the whole story. It's only when he hits absolute rock bottom, blinded, enslaved, reduced to grinding grain in a Philistine prison, that he finally finds what true strength looks like. Stripped of his power, stripped of his pride, he turns to God. Not with arrogance, but in total desperate dependence. That's the moment he truly leans on God for his strength, not himself. Which brings us to our final and, I think, most profound lesson from Samson's life. It's the one that really solves the puzzle we started with. Here's the thing, God's ultimate plan is never derailed by our human failures. Look at how this works. First, the human agent, Samson, acts out of his own weakness and disobedience. It's a total mess. Second, the human consequence. He gets captured, blinded, and completely broken. But third, the divine outcome. That exact moment of brokenness becomes the vehicle for God's purpose. In his final act, an act of pure, dependent faith, he achieves his greatest victory. God used his brokenness to accomplish his plan. So to wrap this all up, looking at Samson's life really leaves us with these three powerful truths. First, gifts are no replacement for character. It's just not enough to be talented. Second, true strength is often found in our weakness, in surrender, not in our own self-reliance. And finally, even when we mess up, even when we fail spectacularly, God's ultimate plan is not going to fail. And so that leaves us with one final thought to really chew on. If God could use Samson's absolute train wreck of a life to fulfill his ultimate purpose, it kind of forces us to ask a different question about our own lives, doesn't it? What amazing purpose might be hiding not in our strengths, but in our very greatest weaknesses?